Hello friends, welcome. This is the Shepherds and Small Flock Holders Guide for pre-lambing vaccinations and checks and such like. Well, I mean it's mid-February at the moment. I mean those that start lambing normally about the 10th of March, normal lambing in the south of England, or later in Scotland about a month later. But at this time of year, it's 6 weeks maybe before lambing. It's time to think about getting your vaccinations if you vaccinate your flock, getting them in stock and keeping them in the fridge, and also drench, worm drench, because roughly 4 weeks before lambing, it's, if you're in an area that certain diseases exist, it pays to vaccinate the flock with Clostridial disease vaccination, which I think we used to use Heptavac. I mean, it's about 8 different Clostridial diseases it covers. 4 weeks before lambing. Of course, the ewes have had it before, so that they only need 1 booster shot normally 4 weeks before lambing. And, it's a subcutaneous injection. Now, they recommend giving it behind the ear. You just lift a bit of skin behind the sheep's ear and you put it under the skin, put the needle in at an angle under the skin behind the ear and give that injection. Now, it's because it has an effect on meat and can cause abscesses on the occasional sheep. And on a lamb, of course, you don't want abscesses where they're going to have good meat on their body. So, yes, but with ewes, the best place to do it, honestly, because they're only going for kebabs and stuff when they do go, to the slaughterhouse or to market. It doesn't really matter where you inject them. The best place is just behind the shoulder. There's a nice flap of loose skin there. You can just grab the wool, pull the skin up, push the needle in at the angle again. The skin's like that. Push the needle in at that angle, just into that lifted bit of skin, so it's under the skin. Don't push it too far so that it comes out the other side, of course. Point it slightly inward, and give them. Usually, it's a 1 to 2 mil shot of that under the skin, and you will get the very odd bad abscess on a sheep at shearing time. The shearer might absolutely knock it off, but it doesn't really matter. Just put a bit of spray on it, it'll be fine. So yeah, that's the best place with ewes. It's much easier if you try to grab the wool on the back of a ewe's head and she's like this. It's a job to get it in there in the first place. So behind the shoulder, it's a practical and easy way to do it, especially if you've got a big flock. So yeah, I mean, it covers things like tetanus, braxy, black leg, a hard tongue, many different of the Clostridial diseases. Now, this is also, while you're handling, our optimum time to give them a drench, a worm burden drench, Panacure. I mean, worm resistance does build up against certain drenches, and there's 2 or 3 different types of drenches. Now, Panacure is one of the most common used, and, you can get it with selenium and cobalt for sheep if you want to, if you've got a lack of that in your area. But, yeah, so Panacure, but, change it every couple of years to one that's got totally different ingredients, so that your worm burden doesn't build up, and then you stay on that new one for a couple of years, and then go back to something like Panacure again, of course. So yeah, I mean, once you've drenched them and given their vaccination, I mean, obviously it's killing the worms off inside them, the parasites inside them. That means they're converting the food stuff in them back to their own body better than worms and that, feeding off their body and whatever nutrients are taken in. Now, so you've done that. That's 4 weeks before lambing, but prior to that, about 6 weeks before lambing, and hopefully, you've put a raddle on your ram and you've got the different colour marks, 2 weeks at yellow, say, 2 weeks at green on the ewe's bum when they get served by the ram, and 2 weeks at red, say, for instance. So you've got 2-week lambing slots. So you can split them up and take your first lot if you're indoor lambing indoors at 4 weeks before lambing. But 6 weeks before lambing, you want to start feeding them concentrates. Now, of course, feeding hay is good, but it's not got enough nutrition in it to feed twins. So singles probably just about get away with hay, but with singles, I'd start, taking them up to about half a pound of food before lambing, quarter of a kilo of food, just to supplement their diet a bit. You don't want them to have too big a lamb, so don't feed them the same as you would a twin. I mean, that's if you scanned them. If you haven't scanned them, then you don't know. You've got to feed everything for a twin. So maybe your singles are getting too much and your triplets are getting not quite enough, unfortunately. But, scanning is a good thing you can do, if you can afford it. But, it's all expensive, isn't it? And, only big flocks can really do that. So, 6 weeks before lambing, make a decision whether you want to do a step feeding program. That's an increasing plane of nutrition. So you start them off on half a pound. Then at week 5, you put them up to 3/4 of a pound. Week 4, up to a pound. Week 5, up to 1.5 pounds. The last weeks, up to about 2 pounds of concentrate of a 16% protein concentrate. Or flat rate feed them, which I did for the last flock I was on, and it works perfectly, no problems at all. And what you do with flat rate feeding is you work out the average amount you'd be feeding them over that 6 weeks, and you confine it into whatever it is. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it was something like around a kg or something, or no, it was a bit less than a kg. It was about half a kg to 3/4 of a kg, I think. I can't remember, you'd have to work it out. So just figure out over 6 weeks how much you'd feed a ewe, and then reduce that in and just give them the set amount from the start to that point of the same amount. So it would be less than what they get at the 6 weeks, and quite a lot more than they get at the first week. But it helps them to put on that body fat and that, and I find it works really well. So yeah, flat rate feeding is good. Of course, if you're feeding some ewes and you don't have a raddle marks on them, you don't split them up into feeding groups, that some of them are, lambing lasts about 6 weeks. Some of them are going to be getting fed for nearly 12 weeks. So sometimes you're going to get difficulties towards the end of lambing with lambs that are too big. So I always recommend using raddles with your rams. You can buy these little paint capsules you can actually stick on the back of your ewes as well. When the ram jumps, it busts it, and you can see the colour, on the ewe. So yeah, so that's worth doing, having a raddle on your ram, or these little paint capsules they put on the ewes, so you know what time they're likely to lamb and stuff. So you do your worming, you do your feeding. Now, it's very, very important all year round to make sure that your sheep have got clean access to water and clean water, free access to water and clean water, because, they do drink quite a lot. You'd be surprised how much they do drink. They might only drink once or twice a day sometimes, but around lambing time, when they're starting to produce milk a few days before they lamb, they need a lot of water. They'll be drinking a couple of gallons a day of water. And, when they've lambed, and they go into an individual pen, you must make sure there's plenty of water there, because, they're feeding those lambs. They're going to drink a good couple of gallons of water a day. So, now, with buckets, don't put them on the floor where the lamb can fall into them. Get them tied up on the side of the pen where they can't strangle themselves or knock them out of the hoop. But just use a wire hoop onto your little pen so that they can't knock those buckets out, and that the lambs can't accidentally fall into them, because that's happened to me before. They've fallen into them and drowned, so it's just a precaution. Don't have them up too high, about 1.5 foot off the floor, so that you can still drink down to the bottom of the bucket. So yeah, of course you don't want to be handling your ewes too much when they're pregnant, so you wait until maybe they're going to be turned out, but it's at optimum time when they're in an individual pen with their lambs. Just get the lambs out the way, sit them up, trim their feet before they go out into the field. Now, if you don't want to drench at 4 weeks before lambing, that is also, before they go out in the field, a good time to drench them in the individual pen with their lambs before they go out to pasture. So it gets them a clean start. But as I say, if you do it 4 weeks before, then it's helping them to not have a worm burden and convert that food. So that's the beginning. This is part 2 of my awareness. I'll be doing episodes, part 3, episode 1, 2, 3, and different things about difficulties you might have with lambing, things you need to look out for. Now, the other thing is that, about 2 to 4 weeks from lambing, if you do happen, unfortunately, to contract a virus or abortion, something that's going to cause a abortion like salmonella, E. coli, toxoplasmosis, which often comes from cats wandering around where the flock's kept, you can lose quite a few lambs. So it's time to watch out for that sort of thing too. Just check round the back end of your ewes to see if there's any blood round them or anything, see if they've aborted and things like that, or any problems, unwellness. I mean, you've got to health check them every day. But, these abortions that do happen, unfortunately, are sometimes brought back in by bringing new sheep into the flock and stuff as well, or other things. Birds can spread it even, and it's terrible when you do get that. If you've got a small flock, it's sometimes hard to get hold of drugs, but if you can have a bottle of penicillin from your local vet, say I've got a small flock, can I have a bottle of penicillin just to treat them for rough lambings or for abortion and stuff. Also get some pessaries that you can put inside their womb, because unfortunately, like E. coli, abortion, salmonella, the lambs go putrid inside, they rot inside the womb. And, with the worst abortions, you can get maybe 20% of your ewes will lose their lambs. And it usually starts about 2 weeks before lambing and lasts 2 weeks into lambing, it seems to clear up. But with all those ewes that abort, or any ewe that you have a really difficult lambing with, you best give them a pessary inside if you can. And also inject them with about 5 ml of a long-acting, preferably, penicillin. So try to ask your vet for long-acting penicillin. There's different types of penicillin for different things, of course. Always treat them if you catch them aborting before. But it's very difficult because, they can't lamb very easily, and it causes their womb to rot sometimes. Some will just be ordinary clean abortions of fetuses, but some, they'll be struggling to push them out and you have to lamb them. And really, it's a horrendous job because they stink. And you start pulling bits of that lamb to pieces because it's rotten inside. You're pulling a leg and it comes off in your hand. And maybe that's something you don't want to do if you're a small flock owner. But basically, almost 80% of those ewes, 75 to 80% of them will die if they've had a rotten lamb inside them, because, it's such an infection inside them. But, once they've been aborted and had that sort of rotten lamb, the chances of them having lambs again are not that really, pretty remote, really. So you might want to get rid of them and, replace that sheep down the market. But you can try them for a year and see if they do lamb the next year or not. But they're the things to watch out to start with. Now, apart from clean water out in the field, it is very important all year round to have ample mineral supply to the ewes and even the lambs once they're out and growing. Excuse me. So you have minerals constantly out there and keep topping them up. Now, if you haven't had minerals out in your field, they're going to gobble them straight away because they do have deficiencies. And, it's something new to eat, and they smell a bit like aniseed, these powdered minerals. Now, you just put them in a bucket on the floor and the rain goes in them and makes it go hard. No good at all. What you want is one of these 5-gallon plastic drums. Just cut a hole out in the front of it so they can get their head in. Don't go cut right down to the bottom. Leave about that much at the bottom. So you can just pour the minerals in there, tie it to a fence somewhere. They can go put their head in, shelters it from the rain. Now, when you buy minerals for sheep, be very careful. Don't get minerals with any copper in. So what you want is a mineral and vitamin supplement, because minerals are very important, trace elements and such like. Sheep are intolerant to copper. It will kill them. So don't get cattle minerals for sheep. Don't feed sheep cattle minerals. Get proper sheep minerals that are copper free. And, there's different elements and selenium and trace elements and all sorts in them that are good for them. So, now when you're worming your ewes, it depends where you are. If you're near a river, then you need a liver fluke drench that will kill liver fluke as well, because that gets on the liver. Obviously, there's different types of worms suffer different areas, so be aware of that too. So I'm going to leave that at that for this video. This is just the pre-lambing things you need to be doing. Thinking about starting flat rate feeding 6 weeks before lambing, or step feeding 6 weeks before lambing, and hay feeding as well. I mean, you don't want to totally stuff them on hay because it takes a long time to, do what they want to do with that to get it through their system. So, think about what you want to do. And, some people that have scanned their flocks with triplets and above don't even bother feeding them any hay. They just put them on a high rate of concentrates to, try to feed up that ewe as much as possible and concentrate, because hay will just stuff their bellies up and make it very hard for them to digest enough. Now, most sheep are losing weight in the last week of pregnancy, even though you're feeding them concentrates and hay, because they just cannot eat enough to feed that lamb. So I'll be going into that, some of the problems of that. And the lamb does most of its growing in that last week. So anyway, thank you for watching. Carry on with this series. See you later. Shep.